Hello guys, how are you? This is chapter 4 in my story. If you are watching now, please give us the likes of our video and subscribe. Without many words we start the story right away. However, the person who entered through the door wasn't Gerald.
Danny, what are you doing here?
The expression on Naomi's face changed as soon as she saw Danny. Both of them were classmates and Naomi was once close to them. However, Naomi had found out that morning that Danny had played a trick on Gerald. Therefore, Naomi lost her temper at Danny. Unexpectedly, this guy was so thick-skinned and he actually came here even though she had just scolded him.
Naomi, are you still angry? I was just joking around with Gerald last night. Who would have thought that he'd actually deliver the box to Yuri?
Danny replied as he smiled cheerfully. Several of his roommates also came with him and they all brought gifts with them. Speaking of it, Naomi's family was also very wealthy and Naomi had already offered to help Gerald several times. However, Gerald had always rejected her goodwill. Danny had known Naomi ever since they were in high school.
Naomi, is this the Gerald that you were going to introduce to me? What's wrong?
Alice asked as she stared at Danny. As soon as Danny saw Alice, his eyes were shining brightly. In fact, he had already wanted to get acquainted with Alice ever since a long time ago. Alice was the most beautiful girl that he had ever seen in the broadcasting and media department. This time, the only reason why he gathered the courage to brazenly come and apologize to Naomi was because he knew that Alice would also be here. As soon as Danny heard Alice's words, he quickly said,
Hello, the beautiful Alice. Gerald is my classmate. He's a pauper that I made fun of yesterday. Ha ha ha.
When Danny recalled that Gerald had delivered some birth control supplies to his ex-girlfriend last night, Danny could not help but laugh out loud.
Shut up.
Naomi replied as she glared at Danny. At this time, Alice had a very strange expression on her face. Was there really such a huge distinction between the poor and rich students? Gerald's roommates also had a very ugly expression on their faces at this time.
Okay. I won't say anything else.
Danny laughed before he said,
Ha ha ha. Naomi, why don't you take a look at what I got for you?
At this time, someone pushed the door open once again. After opening the door, Gerald walked in with a red plastic bag in his hand.
Gerald, you're finally here.
Naomi immediately jumped up with a smile on her face. Gerald nodded in acknowledgement and he immediately noticed Danny, who was staring at him with a mocking expression on her face. In fact, Danny would have a humble expression on his face if it was any other second-generation rich kid. However, right now, this was Gerald. Alice also raised her head to look at Gerald at this time. In fact, Alice really wanted to look for a boyfriend but she could immediately tell that Gerald was probably not from a wealthy family. Alice did not mind if he was from an ordinary family as long as he was handsome and attractive. However, even though Gerald was handsome, Alice could tell that all the clothes that Gerald was wearing from head to toe were not worth more than $50. He was too ordinary. When Alice thought of what Danny had mentioned earlier, her impression of Gerald reached a new low point. Alice's face was filled with disappointment.
Gerald, this is Alice. Alice, this is my friend, Gerald.
Naomi introduced both of them with a smile on her face. Gerald nodded before he replied.
Hello, my name is Gerald. Nice to meet you, Alice.
Gerald extended his hand politely. However, Alice did not even bother to look at Gerald. Instead, she simply turned around and continued sipping her juice. Gerald's hand was hanging in the air and after a short while, he had to take his hand back in anguish. Naomi knew that her best friend had always had such a personality. If she was interested in the guy, she would talk more. Otherwise, she would simply ignore him completely. Gerald did not say anything about it. He simply walked over to sit down at the table. At this time, Danny saw the red plastic bag in Gerald's hand. Danny immediately said,
Well, Gerald, it is Naomi's birthday today. So, what birthday gift did you get here? Why don't you show it to us?
The head of Gerald's dormitory could not stand it anymore and he quickly asked, Danny, why are you always picking on Gerald? Danny simply laughed because he really enjoyed ridiculing and making fun of others. Danny glanced at Gerald with a cold expression on his face before he took out the gift that he bought for Naomi first. It turned out that Danny also bought a black branded bag for her.
Naomi, I bought this for you. A Hermes bag.
As soon as Danny brought out the bag, Alice and all her beautiful roommates were immediately intrigued.
A Hermes bag. The market price for one of these bags is at least $8,000, right?
All of the beautiful girls immediately had a different impression of Danny. This person was really very generous. Alice, the goddess who had always been very cold to everyone else, could not help but glance at Danny at this time.
It's not that expensive. My dad knows the manager at Hermes very well, so I bought it for only $7,900.
Danny smiled as he enjoyed the admiring gaze that everyone was giving him at this time. Even though Naomi really despised Danny, she took it in her hand without saying anything else.
The Hermes Rumble is actually the latest bag launched by Hermes. It is very popular in Macau, Hong Kong, and Taiwan. This same exact bag costs about $12,000 there.
Alice could not help but gasp when she heard Danny's words. Danny saw the expression on Alice's face and he quickly said,
What do you think about this bag? Do you usually do any research on luxury goods?
Alice looked at Danny and she finally smiled faintly before she replied,
I'd wanted to buy this exact same bag before this, but the price is slightly too high.
Danny quickly replied,
Alice dear, I'll get you one for your birthday. $8,000 or $9,000 is not a lot of money to me anyway. Moreover, I know everyone working at the Hermes boutique store across from our university.
Alice did not say anything, but she simply smiled at Danny. Even though she did not know Danny personally, she had heard about him before and she knew that he was a playboy. Unexpectedly, he was also so courageous and generous. Alice could not help but feel a little impressed with him at this time. After that, the head of Gerald's dormitory and all of his roommates also presented their gifts to Naomi, one after the other. Their gifts were naturally not as expensive as Danny's luxury gift, but each of their gifts also cost $300 to $400. Gerald did not want to interfere and he simply planned to give Naomi his gift after everyone was done. However, at this time, Danny looked at the red plastic bag in Gerald's hand before he smirked and said,
Gerald, please show us what you bought for Naomi. Just look at the plastic bag in your hand. It's really very festive.
Danny, can you just shut up? I'd be very happy no matter what Gerald gives me.
Naomi warned Danny again. However, Naomi was also looking at Gerald with a hopeful expression on her face. Gerald regretted his action a little. Since he was in a hurry, he did not want to wait half an hour for the salesgirl to wrap the bag up for him. He thought that it would just be a simple gathering with a few of their close friends. He did not expect that bastard Danny to be here too.
Naomi, I bought you a bag too.
Gerald said as he took the bag out of the plastic bag. Alice frowned at this time because she really could not believe her eyes.
This person was so poor. He was really unbelievable.
Wow!
Danny yelled as soon as Gerald took out the bag.
Gerald actually bought Naomi a Hermes bag too. He bought her a luxury item too. Gerald, could you tell me which market stall you bought this bag from? Is it cheap?
Danny's words made all the girls present laugh out loud immediately. Alice shook her head slightly at this time. She originally thought that even though Gerald was poor, he would probably be a good friend. However, Alice simply looked down on Gerald now.
This is the limited edition collector's Hermes bag that was launched during the 200th anniversary. There are only 200 units of this bag in this world and each of these bags is worth $55,000.
Alice could recognize the bag immediately.
There are also many imitations on the internet and the counterfeit bag cost less than $100. However, no matter how vain a person is, they wouldn't buy the counterfeit version of this bag because it's really embarrassing to use a fake high-end product.
Alice was not polite at all as she glared at Gerald. This person really made her sick. Naomi initially thought that Gerald would buy some gadgets for her, but she really did not expect him to buy her an imitation item instead. However, Naomi still smiled as she said,
Thank you, Gerald. I'm very thankful and happy no matter what you get me, but you shouldn't spend so much money in the future. $100 is a lot of money for you.
Gerald wanted to explain himself and tell Naomi that it was a genuine and original Hermes bag, but he could see that Alice and her roommates were already giving him contemptuous looks. Therefore, he knew that no one would believe him even if he tried to explain himself, and he might end up making them despise him even more. At this time, Alice looked at Naomi before she said,
Naomi, why did you become friends with such an unreliable person?
Naomi did not want to put Gerald in a difficult position. Therefore, she tried to change the topic.
Alright, everyone, it's my birthday today and I'm really happy to be able to celebrate it with all of you. Come on, let's make a toast.
Alice and her roommates continued staring at Gerald in disgust while the other guys did not respond at all. Danny and his friends simply sneered at Gerald. Gerald did not want to make things difficult for Naomi because he knew that she was caught between him and her roommates. He quickly stood up and said,
Naomi, happy birthday to you, but I just remembered something I have to do back in my dormitory, so I'll be leaving first. Have fun.
Gerald knew that he was superfluous, so he got up to leave immediately.
Gerald.
That's all for our video guys, bye for now. It's hot inside so I'm going out. Ha ha ha, bye, see you on my next video.